This is Mary Page from Chicago, and welcome to this week's Rights in Russia interview on the situation for human rights defenders in Russia. Today, our guest is Galina Arapova, Director and Senior Media Lawyer at the Mass Media Defense Center, a media rights NGO that works throughout Russia, based in the city of Voronezh. Ms. Arapova is the author of many publications on Russian media law and international standards in the fields of freedom of expression and information and internet regulation. As a practicing media lawyer, she has also taken a number of cases to the European Court of Human Rights. Thanks for joining us, Galina, and taking time from your many legal responsibilities to share your experiences and perspectives on the situation for media rights in Russia. It's a privilege to spend this time with you.
Thank you so much, Mary. Thanks for the warm introduction and welcoming words.
So I have some questions to frame our discussion that we'd like to get through in the next half hour. So if you're ready, let's get started with my first question. So how would you describe in summary the work that you do?
In short words, I would say that we support freedom of expression and freedom of media and provide legal defense to those who exercise their right to freedom of expression in Russia. Mainly it's journalists, media outlets, bloggers, those who exercise their right in a professional way. But now more and more it's just citizens, students, activists, those who understand that freedom of expression is something really key in their everyday life. So that's the work we do.
Mm-hmm. And these are journalists and citizens from all over Russia?
Yes, exactly. We are located in central Russia, but we provide our legal advice and assistance to everyone who is active in information field, let's say, within Russia. It's journalists, bloggers, and everyone from around the country, and also it could be foreign correspondents working in Russia who are facing some problems, or they who want to know what kind of legal risks they face if they cover situation in Russia.
Okay, great. Thinking about media outlets in Russia, to what extent are they free in terms of what they can publish?
That's a good question. Media regulation, and I follow media regulation since I came to this field, legal field, in 1995. So it's been quite a long time. It's a quarter of a century, really, which sounds crazy. But I see how legal regulation legislation is becoming more and more repressive. Unfortunately, lately that is noticed not just by specific lawyers, like lawyers who work in the field of media law, but also by journalists themselves and even general public. We see that media is not free and it loses its freedom like on a daily basis. And if we look back in time, we will see that the first steps have been taken back in 2001, 2002, like in the very beginning of 2000. And then it was the time when government, state authorities were taking over their control over federal TV broadcasting, and we have been observing this trend, and we understood that it's clearly uh, a campaign, kind of like a campaign of nationalization of main media channels. But then we've seen the whole chain of amendments to legislation that regulates media freedom and the work of journalists and media outlets that restricted ownership, particular foreign ownership in media outlets, then scope of restricted and limited scope of things, issues that media outlets are free to discuss and publish, and the list of this banned information is available now in the legislation, and on a daily basis, media receive these notifications, like the warnings from media regulator, so-called Roskomnadzor, which is the governmental agency that controls media activity of media in the field, in the professional field and internet. And we see that more and more cases initiated against journalists and bloggers. Again, they are being arrested. It's a lot more difficult to cover elections, almost like no possibility actually to cover elections. Media can only publish what is being published by or presented, information presented by members of the campaign, election campaign parties, not themselves. They are restricted to cover protests. Criminal defamation is back. So many things that in many areas, media is losing possibility to cover issues of public concern freely, and they face risks, legal risks on a daily basis. And a lot more media is choosing very careful approach how to cover situation in the country. They apply self-censorship just to keep on going, basically just to survive. And it's very worrying.
Could you talked about the risks that journalists are taking these days. Can you mention some specific problems that journalists have had?
Yeah, absolutely. It used to be the main risk used to be defamation, civil defamation claims, which is quite a civilized way to present some kind of like disagreement with a publication from a person who believes that his reputation was somehow harmed. And it's a kind of like approach which is used by many countries. But now we see that criminal liability up to imprisonment is back. Anti-extremism legislation is used against journalists quite a lot. And content, if this content is announced to be extremist one, then this content cannot be even quoted by the media. As quite a crazy example is that Russian media cannot mention the method that was used by a person who committed suicide, even if it's a matter of public concern. So they cannot just say what exactly this person have done. They can't say that he shoot himself or drown or poisoned himself. They just have to keep themselves in general terms, like committed suicide point. And that's something that really makes information in media in a kind of like too general way, and public, when they read it, they sometimes have this strange feeling that it's either journalists forgot how to use native language and they use this kind of like very strange way to go around the issue, or it's actually no restriction. So now journalists are just using quite straightforward way to deliver to the public that they are acting strange, not because they're stupid or forgot how to use the language, but because otherwise their website would be blocked. They could face like high fines and etc. Another issue that another legal risks that Russian media is facing is a risk to be blocked. I mean internet shutdowns, website shutdowns, internet or web page shut down because general prosecutor or media regulator would find some kind of like banned information on this website. This risk is actually quite high because journalists might, lose the platform they use. The whole media outlet could be just, paralyzed. And we even won one of those cases in the European Court of Human Rights on behalf of Daily Journal. This is online independent media, which was blocked back in 2014, and it's still blocked, even though European Court delivered a judgment in favor of media outlet. And the recent risks that journalists are facing, they face quite a high risk to be arrested, houses could be searched, their equipment and data storage devices could be seized just under some random criminal investigations based on like suspicious of almost like anything, starting from extremism to infringement into privacy. And we have many cases where our lawyers are defending journalists who have been under surveillance. So that kind of risks, which wasn't even on agenda 15 years ago. So that's something like a very short overview. I'm not going to even in details about the foreign agent law, which probably would be another issue for our conversation.
Yes. Thinking about the internet and comparing it to print media, is the internet more free?
Yes, it is actually. Even though Russian authorities are trying to regulate internet, probably more than other governments around the globe, but still, it's more. Internet is freer platform for express yourself and to be engaged into any kind of like discussion on issues of public concern. People use a lot internet. Russia is probably one of those countries where technologies and access to internet and percentage of people using mobile internet is probably higher than in many other countries, because the cost of this is not that high, so people can afford it. So therefore, people use it a lot, and even regular people, regular citizens, not just professionals like journalists and bloggers, they can use internet to share information in social media. They are quite active in this field. And media, when it comes to media, what they choose, they go from print format and from the format of registered media to the format when they create independent website, and it's a kind of like unregistered as a official media information project. As we say, it's not official media, but the team which produces this content is like the very high professional, high profile journalists who've been working for like the key business dailies in Russia. So, and they move to internet. They publish the content that they cannot publish due to censorship and restrictions in official media and print media. They publish it online. They also sometimes during the day they work for governmental media, and at the night they support some kind of like independent oppositional YouTube channel. That kind of stuff is also quite often happening in the country. And also what's important, and I think it's something that is not that negative and important to mention, that many journalists are actually waking up, and they do realize that they cannot keep silent. They cannot agree to play under such a strict rules and follow this game, which is, you know, pushed through the governmental approach. So what they do, they group as investigative journalists groups, and they create these platforms and these websites which are freely publish quite serious pieces of journalistic investigation. And this is exciting. We actually going through like the boom of investigative journalism in Russia. I don't know what how that whole story will end, but in the meantime, we see that internet journalism is much more active. It's active, more active than in other countries, probably due to high level of restrictions.
Mm-hmm. So thinking about your organization, the Mass Media Defense Center, is it able to function as it would like in the current regulatory environment for not-for-profits?
Oh, thank you for this question. It's actually, I would say no. We can't act like we would like to, but we try to survive and act as much as we can. And this is, we are seriously restricted, of course. We are an NGO, and 6 years ago, Mass Media Defense Center was designated as a foreign agent and as an NGO foreign agent, and we are facing legal risks due to that status. It's not just stigmatization, which is clear, because in Russian language, a foreign agent means something, sounds something like a spy, which acts on behalf of foreign government and foreign security service, which, as you understand, we're not. We are human rights defenders. We're lawyers who are actually using Russian laws to defend Russian citizens. And we act on behalf and in favor and to support Russian civil society. But none of these arguments have been taken into account, and unfortunately, we've lost our case on domestic level, and we brought our case before the European Court on Human Rights together with our fellows, together with other uh, 70 NGOs, and we are expecting the decision of the European Court on this issue. In the meantime, we have to report to the state seriously with about all our income and expenditures from we myself as a director, I'm facing legal risks personally if there will be some kind of like mistakes in reports, or we would provide report late, or we would miss a disclaimer when we disseminate information on behalf of our organization, saying that this information is disseminated by a foreign agent. In this case, we would face very high fine, and the fine is up to like 5,000 US dollars, so it's quite a lot. And then if we are punished twice, I myself as a director might be facing criminal liability up to 2 years of imprisonment. So altogether, this is quite serious risks, but not just the risk of being held liable and face like fines or imprisonment. It's also really serious pressure on the activity that we can deliver. A new legislation that was amended, which was introduced, and amendments to the legislation in media field and in the field of foreign agents requires now to communicate with the Ministry of Justice about the agenda, about your program of activity for the future year. And if this activity, the agenda of your activity is not endorsed by Ministry of Justice, then you cannot deliver it. And if you deliver it, being not endorsed, then in this case, you are facing termination of your activity. And that's quite harsh. So I believe that starting from October this year, Russian NGOs might stop any kind of operation when it comes to organizing and conducting events. That's because we believe that providing legal advice and assistance and disseminating information on website is still should not be considered as events. But who knows? It just really depends on the way how they interpret the law.
Mm-hmm. Could you say a little bit about how or whether the foreign agent law affects individual journalists?
Yeah, it is actually. We have the whole range of the whole kinds of sorts of foreign agents. It used to be just one kind of foreign agents NGOs. Now we have 5 different sorts of foreign agents, which could be applied like to almost like anybody, including individuals. Journalists themselves could be considered as foreign agents if they are working for foreign media foreign agent. They could be considered as designated as a foreign agent if they repost pieces of information, publications produced and disseminated previously by foreign media foreign agent, and if they do receive some kind of foreign funding. And now, since December last year, it's another amendment to the law which provides government a tool to a possibility to designate any individual who is involved into political activity and receives any kind of foreign funding or even organizational and methodological assistance, whatever it would mean. So they also could be designated as foreign agents. So all these possible types of status could be applied to any individual, including journalists. Because if a journalist, let's say, if a journalist works for foreign media, uh, then it could be the status could be applied for a journalist working for the media as a freelancer or as a staff member. Then a journalist could be designated as a foreign agent if simply he or she has any kind of like foreign income, even I don't know, $100 as a gift from a friend for a birthday, and he or she is engaged in some kind of a political activity, and it's a really broad scope of a notion what is a political activity, and it's starting from participation in public events like protests, up to expressing your opinion which might affect public. And what journalists do in their regular life, in their work, they do express some kind of opinion, and they disseminate some kind of opinion and information which could affect and could some kind of like influence public opinion. So basically journalists are uh, as our government understands, they are the ones who are engaged into political activity on a daily basis. So if they have any kind of like cooperation with foreign companies, they work for foreign media, they have any kind of foreign funding, then they are under risk. And we have already 3 journalists who've been designated as foreign agents, and that was in December last year. And what's funny about it, they've been designated not as foreign agents individuals, but as foreign media foreign agents. So basically, they've been put on the same level as like a big media corporation, Radio Liberty, Radio Free Europe, because they received the same kind of status.
Wow. Sort of looking beyond journalism and media to the human rights situation in Russia more broadly, is it as bleak as Western media tend to suggest?
Well, it's hard to say because, of course, I don't read foreign media and media from different countries. I know that sometimes Russian media presents a bit different picture, and it depends really what kind of sources of information you use to create your picture of life. Because even here in Russia, we the whole population is divided into 2 groups. One group is watching federal TV and governmental media, and they have like a totally different picture of what is going on in the country. The other group is getting information from internet, and they read oppositional media. They read independent media, and they have like a really gloomy picture, because this media report a lot more about cases of violation of human rights. They publish pieces of investigation, publications about corruption, and they point out all the problems in our society, cases of torture in the police, violation of the rights of protesters. They report like on a daily basis whose house was searched. And when you read all that every single day, you have like a really depressing picture. And unfortunately, as a human rights defender, I would say that it's a kind of true. That's exactly what is happening. But if you like a regular doctor, or I don't know, like a supermarket manager or assistant, you probably won't see that. I don't know how much international foreign media reports about that, what kind of pieces of news they pick to tell about what is going on in Russia for their audience. But being here within Russia, I would say that uh, the real situation in the country probably is a lot more depressing than even media covers, because media cannot, pick all the cases. They cannot cover everything, because if you read the reports of human rights organizations, that is even worse. So yeah, it's a kind of like crisis. It's a human rights crisis in the country, and it's unfortunately it's rolling over, and it's developing into a more serious situation, and probably will be more depressing by the end of this year.
Mm-hmm. And looking into the future more long term, what's your view of media rights and freedom of expression in Russia, say in the next 5 to 10 years?
I'm an optimist. I would like to answer this question saying that, well, I do believe very soon, everybody can enjoy their rights, all their human rights, including the right to freedom of expression, and media will be free, and journalists won't find themselves in jail, and we all won't be, whispering on the kitchen discussing certain things. We won't be, afraid of surveillance and face recognition technologies used against you. I would really hope for all this better picture and better environment, and that rights of my citizens of my country and journalists and media would be respected as it should be. But being at the same time a lawyer, and lawyers are realists, I see that there's no sign that we might face this in the near future, because a legal framework is extremely repressive now, and it was built up as quite restricted in a on a probably during the last 10-15 years, and now it's quite rapidly developing. It's quite rapidly developing in a more negative direction. So unfortunately, if we want this situation to be more comfortable and respectful towards human rights and towards the right to freedom of expression, and media would be able to perform their mission as it should be in the democratic society, then this whole legislation has to be changed. And we do understand that under certain political situation in the country, with the ruling powers kind like softly saying about that like that. So we're not expecting this legislation to be changed for the better. For the worst could be, not for the better. So to change the whole situation, political situation in the country has to be changed first, and then some kind of like serious decision has to be taken to amend legislation to make it in compliance with the European and international standards about in the field of human rights. And that definitely has to be quite a serious political and legislative and judicial reform, which is not foreseen in Russia under current political situation. So, but well, as I said, I'm an optimist. I'm listening myself political analysts, and they say that everything can change really quickly, and history is turns in cycles, and you never know what will happen tomorrow. You think that, well, it's the next elections, nothing good will happen, legislation is really bad, repressions are like everywhere, police has a really strong powers and all that. But then all of a sudden something happens, and some kind of like a person appears that changes the whole atmosphere. Well, we'll hope for the best.
Well, this is a good note to end on. I wish we had more time, but we have to close. Thank you so much, Galina Arapova, for sharing with us your insights and expertise that you've developed over your many years of practice in media law. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mary, for this interesting conversation. I really hope that what we've been discussing today will be a subject for the next discussion, but in a more light situation and with a more positive, forecast.
Absolutely.